Peyton,
I'm Lauren.
and we're here to teach you about the muscular and skeletal system.
I hope you enjoy and learn a lot.
The skeleton is the internal framework of the makeup of the 206 bones of the human body. While there are two types of skeleton systems, there is the axial skeleton and the appendicular skeleton. The axial skeleton is composed of the skull, ribs, spine, and sternum, while the appendicular skeleton is composed of the scapula, clavicle, and pelvis. The bones that make up the skeleton function in a variety of ways. They provide a rigid framework for against which muscles can pull upon and give shape and structure to the bodies and support and protect delicate organs. The ribs and cranium are an example of this. So despite their number and size, bones make up less than 20% of the body, but they're able to have little mass because of their bone structure.
Now we're going to talk about the basic bone structure. The outermost layer is the periosteum, and under that is a layer of compact bone.
So compact bone is composed of lamellae. Lamellae is a mixture, it's like cylinders of protein fibers and mineral crystals, and within this lamellae is narrow channels, and they are called the Haversian canal.
Blood vessels run through each of the Haversian canals. Each Haversian canal is wrapped with many layers of protein fibers. The gaps between the protein fibers are bone cells called osteocytes.
Muscles form from cartilage. The process by which cartilage turns into bone through deposition of minerals is called ossification.
After a person's birth, their cartilage starts to be replaced by bone cells. The place where the bones are elongating is called the epiphyseal plate. Once all of a person's cartilage has been replaced by bone cells, that means that they have achieved their full height and will no longer be growing.
Spongy bone is a network of connective tissue within bones. Though it may sound like spongy bone, like it's soft, it's actually really hard and strong and makes up a lot of strength of bone. So bone marrow is the soft tissue within bones, and it helps produce red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets.
Many people often get bone marrow transplants when they're diagnosed with cancer because it helps create blood cells.
A fracture is a crack or break in a bone, and it is commonly caused by a lot of stress attenuated on the bone. A joint is where two bones meet. There are three types of joints. There's a movable joint, a semi-movable joint, and movement. Movable joints allow for the body to perform a wide range of movements. An example of this is a ball and socket joint found in your shoulder. So ligaments are tough bands of connective tissue that holds the bones together in the joints.
And the bones are covered by synovial fluid, which lubricates them and keeps them from having damage caused by friction.
Sometimes the protective structure, such as synovial fluid, isn't enough and can still cause injury and disorders. One disorder that can be caused is rheumatoid arthritis. Rheumatoid arthritis happens when the immune system attacks body tissues. This can lead to swollen, inflamed, and deformed and stiff joints.
Another type of arthritis is osteoarthritis. This is a degenerative joint disease where the cartilage degenerates and the surface of the bone becomes thinner and rougher. What happens is when the bones rub together, since there's no cartilage, the nerve cells sense it and it causes severe discomfort.
So now we're going to go over some basic bones of the human body. So first is the cranium. The cranium is commonly referred to as the skull. Next is the clavicle. The clavicle is like your collarbone right here.
Next we have the scapula, which are your shoulder blades, and they kind of look like little triangles on the back. And then after that are the ribs, which make up your ribcage, which is right here, which connects to your organs.
Then on your arms, you have the humerus. The humerus is this long bone right here, and it connects like to your elbow and such. And then there's the radius and the ulna. So when you hold out your hand like this, the radius is on the right, or the outer bone. It connects to your thumb, so this bone. And then the ulna is the inner bone. Metacarpals and the carpals and phalanges. So the metacarpals and carpals are the bones of the wrist, and then the phalanges are like your fingers. And also referred to as digits or such.
And then moving on down, we have the femur, which is the largest bone in your body.
Yep,
and
your
the
leg.
strongest.
That's like the top of your legs, like your thigh.
And then also is the patella, which is your kneecap. And then there's also the tibia and fibula, which are similar to the ulna and radius.
So the fibula is the outer bone, so it's like the radius. And then the tibia is the inner bone, so it's like here while the fibula is here. So it's like the radius and ulna.
And then much like your hand and your feet, you have tarsals and metacarpals and phalanges.
Everybody knows the bones just had to find a way. Everybody knows what I'm talking about, that's how we'll get an A. My body's many parts, and this is where it starts. Phalanges, I have 10, and metacarpals then. I've got some tarsals too, I put them in my shoe. The fibula is next, according to my text. And now I'm up to my knees, yeah, that's the patella to me. I'm doing the bone dance, I study the answers again and again till I get it right. I'm doing the bone dance, you live and you learn. We won't mess up this test, we'll get it perfect.
A muscle is an organ that can contract in a coordinated fashion. A muscle includes muscle tissue, blood vessels, nerves, and connective tissues.
The human body has 3 types of muscles, which are skeletal muscles, smooth muscles, and cardiac muscles. Skeletal muscles are the muscles that are responsible for the moving parts of the body. Each skeletal muscle tissue is made up of elongated cells, which are called muscle fibers. Muscle fibers contain many nuclei, which are striated between light and dark. Skeletal muscle fibers are grouped into dense muscles called fascicles. A group of fascicles bound together by connective tissues form a muscle. Since the contractions of these skeletal muscles can be controlled, they are called voluntary muscles.
Smooth muscle cells are spindle-shaped, have a single nucleus, and interlace to form sheets. Smooth muscle cells lack striations that are found in skeletal muscle tissue. Smooth muscle fibers are surrounded by connective tissue, but the connective tissue doesn't unite to form tendons. Smooth muscle is an involuntary muscle because it cannot be consciously controlled and contracted as to the desired want. So some examples of smooth muscles would be the inner lining of the stomach, intestines, blood vessels, and other internal organs.
And then the third kind of muscle is cardiac muscles. Cardiac muscles are the muscles that line the walls of the heart. They share some characteristics with both skeletal muscles and smooth muscles. They're similar to skeletal muscles because of the fact that they're striated, and then they're similar to smooth muscles because they're involuntary.
A skeletal muscle fiber is a single multinucleated muscle cell. A skeletal muscle may be made up of hundreds of these, depending on just like the general size of the muscle and like the function. Although muscles are made up of the skeletal muscle fibers, they are also made up of a lot of connective tissues, blood vessels, and nerves.
The health of a muscle depends on its nerves and blood supply. Each muscle fiber has a nerve ending, which is responsible for its activity. Active muscles use up a lot of energy and need a constant supply of nutrients and oxygen. And the active muscles also produce a large amount of metabolic waste which need to be removed through veins.
A skeletal muscle fiber contains bundles of thread-like structures. These are called myofibrils. Myofibrils are made of 2 types of proteins. They're made of myosin and actin. Myosin is thick proteins, while actin is the thin proteins.
Actin and myosin filaments are arranged so that they're overlapping, which causes striation of the muscles tissue. The actin filaments are anchored at their endpoints and to a structure called the Z-line, and the regions from one Z-line to another is called the sarcomere.
A tendon is a tough fibrous cord which attaches muscle to bone.
The point where the muscle is attached to the stationary bone is called the origin, and the part where the muscle is attached to the moving bone is called the insertion.
A flexor is a muscle that bends a joint.
An example of a flexor is the bicep muscle because when the bicep muscle contracts, the elbow extends.
An extensor is a muscle that extends a joint.
An example of an extensor is when the tricep muscles contract, the elbow straightens. Glycogen is stored inside muscle cells, and they're used when not enough glucose is delivered to the muscle cells for energy. And when all the glycogen is used up, fat cells are then burned to produce energy, and they produce a lot of energy for the cells. And once there's no energy available, muscle fatigue sets in.
Muscle fatigue is the physiological inability of the muscle to contract. Oxygen is used during cellular respiration to produce ATP. ATP is required during exercise because it is a strenuous activity. However, during exercise, a lot of oxygen is not being taken in. There's an oxygen deficit. This leads to an oxygen debt because there is an inability of oxygen being consumed.
Oxygen debt is responsible for the buildup of metabolic waste called lactic acid. Lactic acid is what's responsible for the muscle soreness during extraneous exercise. Also, oxygen debt causes a person to be severely out of breath after they exercise. The debt is slowly paid off as more oxygen becomes available and the person may return back to their regular breathing pattern, but the muscle soreness can remain until all of the metabolic waste has been excreted. So now we're going to talk about some of the basic muscles in the human body. So first is the trapezius, which is like the back of your neck, and then there are the deltoids, which are basically your back muscles.
Then there is the triceps and biceps. So like the bicep muscle is like this muscle right here, like on the front, and then there is the triceps, which is the back muscle of your arm.
And then there are also the abdominal muscles. Though they may not always be visible, everyone does have abdominal muscles. It's just whether you can see them or not.
Then there is the gluteus maximus, which is the butt muscle. Yes, and yes, it is muscle.
And then there's the gastrocnemius, which is your calf muscle.
So yeah, your calf muscle. You can work your gastrocnemius by using like calf raises and stuff. So
that was our presentation for the skeletal systems and the muscular systems.
I hope you enjoyed this and you learned a lot.